Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa will launch the 16 Days of Activism Campaign against gender-based violence in Limpopo today. The annual global campaign aims to raise awareness against all forms of abuse against women and children. Now, it comes as South Africa is still reeling from cases of femicide, such as the death of UCT student Uyinene Mrwetyana. Let's go live now to our reporter Mbali Thethani, who's in Lephalale. Mbali, a very good morning to you, and thank you for joining us. So, we know that the president has been very vocal about issues around gender-based violence measures and really raising concern and awareness around this matter. What can we be expecting from him today as he launches the 16 Days of Activism?
Well, of course, President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to come here at the Witpoort police station in Limpopo. And as you rightly said, we do know that the president has been quite vocal in terms of gender-based violence. He has also alluded to issues around saying that it is a national crisis and it is something that needs urgent importance and needs urgent intervention. So, of course, he will be making his way here. And this specific police station actually provides a support center. And this is a support center for victims of gender-based violence. But of course, we do know that the government has already come up with an action plan as they try and deal with the issues around gender-based violence. An amount of around 1.6 billion rand has been allocated as the country tries to grapple with the problems around gender-based violence. But of course, joining us now, we are joined by the Deputy Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. Now, Mamhlenge, I just want to find out, as we continue to deal with the problems around gender-based violence, what exactly is the problem here and why can't we get it right as a country?
I think we have come a long way. When we started, we had legislation, for instance, the Domestic Violence Act, which could not be implemented because the heads of our police stations were not ready. Our courts, they didn't get sufficient information. The prosecutors didn't get sufficient information. I think what has happened over the past year is critical in terms of saying, let's revisit the implementation and look at all the gaps. For instance, the capacitation of the police stations like the one we are visiting now, we want to check and see whether they have the rape kits. We want to see whether the police are able to create a conducive environment for women not to run away but to come and report cases. We want to see whether they have the tools of trades to ensure that the examinations take place timelessly. So the whole criminal justice system is a major breakthrough in this struggle. You mentioned the 1.6 billion that has been mobilized within government departments. It's so important because it has allowed even the expansion of sexual offences courts to rural areas like this. It has allowed the expansion of Tutuzela centers, which are critical in supporting victims as they go through a legal process. But above everything, since the signing of the declaration by the president, we have now the NSP, the National Strategic Plan, which really is guiding everybody as to what interventions needs to be taken to make sure that we curb this scourge.
Now, of course, Minister, we've seen a scourge, of course, in gender-based violence. Why is it so important for South Africans to actually observe and look at this 16-day?
Is an international map that has got its own history. But what we have said as South Africa is that we are on this campaign for 365 days a year. Hence, if you look at the configured now government, the Department of Women is now looking at youth and persons with disabilities so that all the vulnerable groups are under one roof. And so we are elevating this day today because it's the International Day of Gender-Based Violence. But the commitment out there, we are calling for more partnerships. Groups, the private sector has really, really touched us, because we've had so many people requesting that we come and address them. They've come up with corporate policies on gender-based violence, and so there's a revolution as of 2019, which I think it strengthened partnerships, and it gives victims out there a sense of hope that at least now government is in control, as in charge.
Now, one would say that the gender-based violence issues we are seeing now are actually at the hands of men in South Africa. Are men in South Africa willing to come to the party and try to sort out this issue?
You know, over the past few months, since the president made a clarion call and put his face in the forefront of this struggle, we've seen quite a number of men in Bezos, men's fora. They've come out even from the churches, which is quite important, but it's not enough. We need more, that nobody is left behind. Even in tribal authorities, in rural communities, we want men who are going to raise a hand and say, not in our name.
And if you could also just enlighten us, what is the significance of President Cyril Ramaphosa coming to this specific police station?
I think, you know, the president, what he has done, when he has decided to say, I'm going to tackle this, is very, very important, because it talks to the political will. It talks to the commitment at the highest office. And it has bound all of us. If you look at the number of ministers who are here today, who have never worked in a coherent manner as we are doing today. But because of his leadership of saying, this is about government as a whole, and I'm not going to let any one department to deal with it, it's making a big difference. We can hold each other accountable now.
Thank you very much. That is the Deputy Minister in the Presidency of Women. But of course, we do understand that the President is expected to make his way here. And as the Minister mentioned, she has mentioned that a number of people have made their way here. We have seen the likes of the Police Minister, Mbali. He's also here today. The ministers around women as well. She's also here. But of course, not only ministers who are here today, we've seen a number of men, we've seen a number of women who have come here today, and they are expected to listen to the President's message when he launches the 16 days of activism against women and children here in South Africa. With that, Mpho, it's back to you.
Thank you so much. Let's leave it there, Mbali. Of course, we'll continue that discussion on gender-based violence. When we return, we talk youth and their awareness of gender-based violence. This after a survey identified sexual violence and abuse as one of the top humanitarian crises facing society today, as well as young people. That story and more coming up after the break. Stay tuned.